We have reached the All-Star break, and it's time to look back on the season so far with a special guest. It's former Kings player and radio analyst Daryl Evans on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you are enjoying this content. My name is Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for almost 30 years, 20 plus years at the Fox Sports Radio Network. I've also been co-hosting the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 16 years. And of course, a passionate LA Kings fan for the past 30 years. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. We are excited to have former LA Kings left winger and radio analyst Daryl Evans back with us to discuss what's been going on so far with the LA Kings. Daryl, how are you?
I'm great, Eddie. How you doing today?
Doing very, very well. Any special plans for the break here that we have for the All-Star game?
Just a matter of getting caught up on some things. We've been on the road for the last 11 days. So just get caught up, spend some time with my kids and that, and, get ready for the crunch. It's going to be a busy schedule when we get back and a lot of special things happening. Dustin Brown jersey retirement, statue going out front of Crypto.com arena. So a lot going on, and just kind of build up and get ready for it all.
Yeah, I definitely want to ask you about that special night coming up. But I want to start by asking, kind of unfortunately, about the Kings' last game. A chance to close out the first half of the season in first place in the Pacific, a chance to wrap up a road trip with a big win over one of the top teams in the NHL. And unfortunately, the Kings couldn't hold a 3-goal lead and lose in overtime to the Hurricanes. Certainly a very disappointing loss, especially considering all the circumstances. Any concern of any kind that loss could have any kind of lingering effect, or with the 10 days off, is that not a concern at all?
No, I don't think it's any type of a concern. There's no doubt it's a disappointment. But I think if you have to look at the day that you left on the road trip, looking at the lineup that the Kings had with some of the injuries that they had, and you would have said you're going to come back 3-2-1, regardless of how you get the points, you sit there and say, okay, that sounds pretty fair. I think I'll take that right now. And, all in all, it was a good road trip for the Kings. You play over 500 on a road trip like that, it's would be deemed successful. Now, when you have a 3-goal lead and there's only 20 minutes of hockey left, sure, you'd like to be able to shut that one down, but you're also playing against the hottest team in the NHL right now in the Carolina Hurricanes, who now, after their win last night against Buffalo, are 9-0-1 in their last 10 games. So, there's a lesson to be learned. I think it's what you learn from it. It'll tell you how much of an impact that game had. But, they got to share a first place going into the All-Star break. And I think they have to be pretty content with that, considering the ups and downs that they've had through the course of the year. I think over the last maybe 6-7 weeks, they've started to stabilize a little bit, re-identify themselves as to what type of team they're going to be and what type of team they have to be going down the stretch. So, again, we'll see how it comes out of it, but I don't think it's going to affect the Kings in a negative way in any way whatsoever.
Well, last time we talked, we were only 7 games into the NHL season, and the Kings certainly had a few wild games early on. That was certainly a small sample size to talk about, but now they've played 53 games. So what are your thoughts so far on the season and where the Kings find themselves at the moment?
Well, I think where they find themselves in the standings, they've got to be pretty happy with that. Of course, you'd always like to be higher and have more wins than you have, but you also have to remember, games like you had in Carolina the other night when you've got a 3-goal lead. Well, there's been nights when the Kings have been down 2 or 3 goals and they've battled back and, secured points in those games. So they all even themselves out come the end of the year. I think the Kings, through the course of the year, there's been some up and downs. I think when you look at the success that they had last year and coming into this year, the addition of Kevin Fiala, everybody expected, them to, be a little bit more of an offensive team. And I think they kind of got away from their identity. This team, the backbone of this team has always been strong defensive play, good goaltending, strong penalty kill. And that kind of got away from the Kings a little bit. And there's still some areas that need to be cleaned up a bit. But I think now, after that 6-0 loss in Buffalo, when the month of December started there, they dialed it in. I think they've reestablished themselves. They've got an identity now, and they know what they have to do and what it takes in order to win. They've had some success with it, and they've had some ups and downs. The big thing is in the NHL right now, it's such a competitive league. There's so much depth on every team that you play, whether you're up against the first line, the fourth line. There's so many guys that are capable of finish, and you've got to play 60 minutes as close to it as you possibly can on any given night. So consistency is one of the things that you want to learn, and it's one of the things that will apply to success in in this next part of the season. And also, when you look at the Kings coming into this year, last year they flew under the radar. Nobody expected them to be where they were, get into the playoffs last year. Well, when they made that step and got into the postseason, now you don't catch teams by surprise. They know what to expect. They also see the team that had success last year. You add Kevin Fiala. They did it without Drew Doughty in the second half of the season. In the playoffs, we were without Arvidsson. So this is a team that is, it's finding a way with different challenges this year. And so far, I think they've done a pretty good job at, owning up to them.
Well, one of the challenges has certainly been in net. And the last time we spoke, there was no way we could have predicted that Cal Peterson would be in the AHL, that Jonathan Quick would be struggling, and that Phoenix Copley would have the number one job in providing the Kings some stability in net. Goaltending is obviously a concern. It's obviously very important for every team. How do you feel about the situation in net right now?
Well, there's no doubt there's a question mark there, but I still think there's also the ability to be able to get the job done for what the Kings need. The NHL is a different game today, and the goaltenders are the ones that are probably feeling it the most. There's more depth in every lineup. Guys in the third and fourth line now don't dump and chase the puck like they used to. They've got the ability to be able to take the puck to the net. Everybody shoots the puck better than they did. There's so many layers of screens, redirections. Every team, you see them every day practicing, tipping pucks, and it's a tough position to play right now. And then you also look at the angles of where some of the goals are coming from. I get the luxury of being able to watch the visiting teams, and their skates and practices and things. And guys are lining themselves out outside the faceoff dots, down at the base of the faceoff circle. These are like just not natural movements for the goaltender to make, to be able to come and get shots coming out of the corner. And these guys are perfecting those shots. They're getting them on the net, and they're finding a way to score more goals. So as a goaltender, you've got to expect everything. And this is where I really think that you have to bear down as a team. You've really got to play a real strong defensive game. And the Kings showed that they can do that. They did it in the month of December. They were number one in the league in block shots, the fewest grade A scoring chances, slot shots allowed in that month, and it spelled success for them. So they're capable of doing that. And with that, they've got the goaltending that I think that can make the saves. You're not necessarily looking for the spectacular saves. You're looking for the routine saves. It's the weak goals. Those are the ones that hurt a hockey club. They deflate you. So I think the Kings, they've got the ability with the guys that they have in net. They can get the job done. And I just think collectively as a team, everybody's got to be a little bit better defensively, and it starts between the pipes. And they know that. But I think they're very capable of getting that job done.
The Kings penalty kill got called out specifically by GM Rob Blake in late November. It seems like it's been steadily improving. If you agree with that, specifically, why do you think it has been improving, if you think it has been?
Well, it started again. You go back to the month of December, you take a look at fewer penalties taken for one thing. When you're taking 4 and 5 penalties consistently every night, the opposition's going to learn your tendencies, and you're going to start spending more time in a defensive zone, and pucks are going to end up in the back of your net for whatever reason. Starts in the faceoff circle. You've got to win draws because, let's face it, when you start a penalty kill, you're in your own zone. You got to win draws. You get the puck out, all of a sudden you buy yourself 15, 20 seconds, maybe even a little bit more by getting the puck all the way down the ice. Guys are blocking more shots. And that was very notable in the month of December. And then goaltenders making the saves, making the saves you expect them to make, not giving up the soft goals. And collectively as a group, you bring all those things together and it spells success. And the Kings penalty kill is definitely much improved. It still has a whole nother layer it's got to get to. And, they've got to find a way to get their job done because there's some great power plays out there in the league. And there's, as again, we talk about skill at 5-on-5. Well, when you get into power plays, 5-on-4s and 5-on-3s, 4-on-3s, those skilled players, they get it's just that little bit more extra room and time, and that makes them that much more of a threat.
We're going to have more with LA Kings radio analyst Daryl Evans in a moment. Going to ask him about the Kings maybe making a deal at the upcoming trade deadline. But real quick, I need to let you know that today's episode of Locked On LA Kings is brought to you by FanDuel. This year, it's the only app you're going to need at your Super Bowl party. America's #1 sportsbook. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the number one sports book in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's even better because they have so many features that can make betting fun and easy. Download FanDuel now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $300 back in a bonus bet if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads and who will score a touchdown. FanDuel Sports app is safe, secure, super easy to use, and best of all, you can get paid your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no-sweat first bet for Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. More with the man who scored the overtime game-winning goal in the Miracle on Manchester for the LA Kings, radio analyst Daryl Evans. I'm sure he never gets tired of somebody mentioning that fact. The NHL trade deadline about a month away. Are there any areas of the LA Kings you think GM Rob Blake would like to address the most?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. Goaltending right now is a little bit of a question. I think we talked a little bit about it that, I think the Kings have the ability to be able to get sufficient goaltending from the guys that they have in place. But I think the biggest need is probably for that left shot defenseman, preferably somebody with a little bit of size and a little bit of length in their game. They could maybe get in and kill penalties, bring a little bit of an edge to the game. I think that's probably the biggest need for the Kings. I think if they can get that position cleared up, I think it'll help with, the goaltenders alone, and they'll just be a better team all around for that. And I think they'll line up a lot differently against opposition's top lines.
Looking at the Western Conference, there are certainly some very good teams, but no real great teams like we've seen with Boston. And you mentioned Carolina earlier. If you agree that the West is a bit more wide open, do you think that might affect Rob Blake's decision to be a little more bold with, going after a player or two because the opportunities that the Kings might have in the West, with it being, I don't want to say down, but not as strong as the East?
Well, I think Rob Blake, even going back to last season when we talked to him, um, everybody understands, the need for the Kings, where things are. Last year, Jonathan Quick this year, he's in the last year of his contract. With Cal Peterson getting off to a rough start at the beginning of the year, that opened up, some questions in with regards to goaltending. But defense has been one that's always been there. You look at the way they're lined up, the prospects that they have coming. Jordan Spence, who played last year, at the end of the season in the playoffs. Brent Clark that they have, who went back, got a few games in at the beginning of this year. They've got some guys coming in that regard, but they're all right-handed shot defensemen. So again, it's still, that hole is on the left side. So he's been exploring that. Again, it's probably, goes back to last season at some point. And, there's names that come up. You hear different rumors all the time from time to time. But there's no doubt that I think that, he's doing his due diligence at this time to try to make the team a better team. He's committed to do that. The organization is committed to do that. And I think the players understand that, Rob Blake and his group are continue looking to improve the team by, didn't take them long last year when they went out and acquired Kevin Fiala. They made sure they got right on the top of that one. And, what an addition he's been to the hockey club, leading the team in scoring. So when the time comes, that move will come. And, if the Kings are fortunate enough that it happens, in the next month or even, sooner than, the month expires, so be it. They'll take advantage of that. But if not, then it'll something that'll come again in the off season and prepare for moving forward. I think they've shown that, with the players that they have in place right now, that they can get the job done. They can find a way to succeed, maybe not quite get to the level where they want to get, but they found a way last year. Nobody thought they'd get to the postseason, especially with the team that they had last year. And the guys found a way to be able to get that done. So they've got to dig deep. They've got some work to do. But I think they have the pieces in place to be able to do that and get this team into the postseason play.
No team has played more games before the All-Star break than the LA Kings, 53 games. And I know a lot has been made about the Kraken having a lot of games in hand. Maybe they can extend their lead because of that, and talk about teams like the Oilers and the Flames getting to gain ground on the Kings because they've got games in hand. I was wondering, though, since the Kings don't have as many games in the second half as they had in the first half, as far as like the condensed schedule and all that, are there advantages to that in the second half of the Kings and can have more of a balanced schedule, I guess, than they did in the first half?
Oh, without a doubt. I think there's positives to be taken away. Just depends on how you want to look at things. In the second half or even past the second half, let's just face it, the Kings, they've got 29 games remaining. So with 29 games remaining, you're going to get more rest than you had after playing 53 games. Earlier in the season, it's a lot easier to play more games in a compressed schedule. Less wear and tear in the body, less travel. You've had the summer off, not as many injuries. Now, as you get to this time of the year, you're dealing with injuries, and guys who've got 50, 55 games under their belt, they're more susceptible for injuries. And I think the Kings, they've worked hard to get to where they're at right now. Again, like we said earlier, they'd like to have more points than they have right now. Everybody would. But I think they're sitting in a decent position. The other teams, yes, they have some games in hand, and by the time the Kings play the next game on February the 11th, they could find themselves 2 or 3 spots down in the standings. But so be it. You worry about the things you can control, not the things that you can't. Right now, the Kings have put the points in the bank that they can to this point. I can't change anything in the past. All you can do is dictate what happens in the future, and hopefully through the break here, Kings will get healthy. They'll be able to get a couple of their bodies back, and those guys should have an impact on the hockey club. They went in quite undermanned on a very difficult road trip leading into the All-Star break, and they fared well. They came out over 500, so that's not too bad. I think that just shows a little bit of the character of the hockey club.
The Kings, even in the past when they were winning their Stanley Cups, you talk about the identity of the team being more defensive, but it is kind of fun to see a team that has such skill offensively. With the goal Kevin Fiala had the other night, the pull and drag against Carolina, the power play now is really kind of starting to click of late, and we're seeing the passing and the movement. The Kings, obviously, we want them to win, and that's the most fun, but they are playing a style now, it seems, and the depth they have offensively, that is more entertaining and enjoyable to watch, and to see some of these guys pull off their skill. Adrian Kempe, guys like that. It's been fun to watch the Kings this year.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. The Kings have elevated their skill set, and that goes back to probably the last 3 or 4 maybe drafts, maybe even further back than that. Instead of looking for that big the big body, 6'4", 230 pounds, a dump and chase type of guy. They've added skill. You look at the draft choices they've had. Guys that are in the lineup right now in Kempe, Velarde, Kupari, Turcotte, Byfield now. Brant Clark, these guys all have a different skill set than maybe what the Kings, scouting staff and management was looking at, 5-6 years ago, and they've changed their identity. Still, when it comes down to, playoff time, you still have to be a heavy team. You still got to be a committed team. The game tends to get a little bit more physical in the postseason, and they're not calling the penalties quite the way they are in postseason, the way they do in the regular season. So you might not be getting as many power play opportunities, in the postseason, which magnifies them that much more. So I think the Kings are kind of like a lot of teams right now. They're in that transition, be it the teams that have been there, in the playoffs and gone deep in the playoffs the last few years, your Tampas, your Colorados, teams like that. Boston knows what it's like, even though Toronto hasn't gone deep. They've had some playoff experience. So the Kings know that they've got to add some pieces and maybe change a little bit. Maybe they add, a little bit of, a little bit more size, a little more physicality in their game. But, you still got to get through the race during the regular season. Otherwise you don't get to the dance floor. And during the regular season, it's not that, that grinding style of hockey that's going to get you there. You've got to be able to, match up with these teams. And, a couple of years ago, you look at it like a 3-2 league. Well, it's probably more like a 3.5 to 2.5 league. Like right now, you've got to be able to score more goals than you did a couple of years ago, because you're giving up more chances. You're giving up more grade A chances. The skill set across the NHL is higher, and the ability to be able to finish is a lot higher. And the referees aren't afraid to call penalties, regardless of what time of the game is. They're not afraid to give a team a 4-on-3 advantage in the third period. If you're up a goal, down a goal, they'll still make the call. So you've got to be able to adjust and to be able to have players that can play in all the situations and kind of flip that switch, so to speak. That's where you're going to find your success.
More with Daryl Evans in a moment. Got to ask him about the Kings getting into the playoffs, and of course, a special night coming up for the LA Kings in their next home game. But real quick, I need to let you know that today's episode of Locked On LA Kings also brought to you by Built Bar. Looking for a delicious treat, but don't want all the fat and calories? You got to try a Built Bar. They are delicious. with 100% real chocolate. They come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter, brownie, and coconut almond. Not sure how they do it, but they taste like a candy bar, but they're actually healthy for you. 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar with 17 grams of protein. And now you don't have to wait around to get a box to order them at built.com. You can go to your local Walmart or Sam's Club. They're in the pharmacy section. In addition to those new flavors, they've got old favorites too, like cookies and cream, double chocolate, and coconut puff. Built bars, protein bars that taste like candy bars. We've got more with Daryl Evans. And Daryl, when the Kings return from the All-Star break, you mentioned it, 29 games left in the season. What gives you confidence the Kings will maintain a playoff spot and have a good showing in the postseason? And what gives you concern?
Well, the things that give me confidence is they've shown that they can do it. They believe they can do it, and it's just a matter of doing it on a consistent basis. Um, the the concern is, like, if you go back to this, the most recent road trip, I don't think the Kings played a real solid, complete 60-minute game. And it's tough to play 60 minutes. Let's face it. The opposition's not going to roll over regardless of where they are in the standings. That, you're going to have your push, they're going to have their push, and it's a matter of taking advantage of the opportunities that you get. So, uh, the last game against Carolina, one of the best teams in the NHL right now, the way that they're playing, and the Kings in the second period dominated that game. Now, okay, you like to put that one in a bottle and be able to sell it over the shelf, but that's not going to happen all the time. But then you go to the other extreme in the third period, and it happened earlier in the trip too when the Kings had a 3-2 lead going into Nashville in the third period. They changed their game a little bit in the third period. So it's committing to what the systems that they have in place, that the coaches have put together, and executing them. When you're tired, and let's face it, I think the Kings have been a mental and a physically fatigued hockey club, not an excuse through the first part of the year because the workload and the schedule. That wasn't the case in this trip because the games were spread out a little bit more evenly. But you make little mental mistakes, and they all of a sudden end up in the back of your net, and the flow of the game changes. So I think the Kings believe that they can, move forward and do well. Special teams, power play has definitely been clicking at a pretty consistent and successful rate through the year. Penalty kill has been much better as of late. That'll be a key going down the stretch. You're going to need to get real solid penalty killing. And with solid penalty killing, I always say your best penalty killer is your goaltending. So that means goaltending's got to elevate a little bit. They've got to make the routine save. They can't give up the easy goals because sometimes it'll deflate a hockey club. Just depends on where they are in the stage of the game, and and the mental stage of where the team is at. If you've lost a couple of games in a row and your goalie gives up a soft goal, and all of a sudden you sag for a little bit. Whereas when things are rolling, you just get up in the next shift and you go back the other way, and away you go. Concerns again would be the defensive play of the Kings. If they could put that piece in place on defense, I think that'll help secure the penalty kill a little bit, get them to a level where they haven't been all year. It'll give them a little bit more size back there. It might allow you to clear the puck out a few more times, prevent a couple chances coming in off the rush. But it's a real fine line where the Kings are at. I think any addition that Rob Blake and his staff put together is going to be one that'll definitely complement the hockey club. Nothing will be done just for the sake of making a move or just to go out and try something. They'll do their homework and make sure there's going to be a piece that'll make a difference. But it should be a great race going down. If you look at it again, looking further down the road, these are playoff games now. Each and every game is magnified. There's so much meaning to it. I think you have to set yourself a number, whether it's 95 points, 100 points, where you feel you're going to get there. And if you achieve your goal, and let's face it, sometimes, like when you go out and you play a game, you could play your best game and still get beat. But all you want to know is you did your best. And that's what the Kings are looking for, to perform at their best. Don't beat themselves. And I think the Kings control their own destiny, that if they play their game of hockey the way they're capable of playing, they should be a postseason team.
And one final one for you. The Kings' next home game is going to be a special one. Saturday, February the 11th, Dustin Brown night, statue unveiled, jersey retirement ceremony. Dustin's not going to go to the Hockey Hall of Fame, but obviously the Kings have had Hall of Famers, Gretzky, Robitaille, Dion, but he was drafted by the Kings, played his entire career with the Kings. Unlike Luke and Wayne and Marcel, won 2 Stanley Cups as the captain of the LA Kings. Is he the greatest LA King?
Is that the end of your question?
That's is he? Do you think Dustin Brown is the greatest LA King? Not the greatest player who ever wore a King sweater, but from start to finish, never was with another team, winning Stanley Cups, and oh, by the way, had a pretty good career. Do you think there's an argument to be made that he is the greatest LA King?
Well, first of all, on the one comment that you made that you don't think he'll get into the Hockey Hall of Fame, I don't think that's for sure that he's not going to get into the Hockey Hall of Fame. I think he deserves, real strong consideration. You look at some of the players that have gone in, and you look at how accomplished Dustin is, what he accomplished in his career. He's in that conversation of one of the greatest Kings ever. One thing that he holds over any of them, regardless of who the other guys are, is he hoisted that Stanley Cup over his head, and he captained that hockey club. So that has a lot to say for it. Dustin's not only been a great player on the ice, but he's been great in the community as well. He and his family, the community's embraced them. They're involved in youth hockey, and everywhere you go, in the hockey world around here, that Dustin Brown is, his name is known. Greatest, I don't know if you can pinpoint that on one player. I don't think it's fair to put it on one player because everybody's different in so many different ways. Different players. I'll go back with Dave Taylor, who spent his entire career with the Kings as well. Member of arguably the best modern day hockey line at his time with the Triple Crown line. The amount of points that he put up, the amount of goals that he scored, the style of hockey that he played. General manager of the King, responsible for a few of the key pieces that are in the Kings, on the King Stanley Cup teams, the guys that he drafted. So he's in that conversation as well. Luke Robitaille did it in a different fashion. He was a goal scorer, very charismatic. His ability to connect with the fans and things like that. Again, another guy who spent a lot of time in his career. So there's a number of guys who can go in that. So I don't think you can pinpoint just one guy, but Dustin Brown's definitely up there amongst the top of that list with a couple of other guys. And it's well-deserved what he's going to get, having his sweater raised to the rafters, statue being put out front. I know there's been a lot of people talking about it, looking forward to it. And, Dustin Brown was one of those guys with a little bit more of a quiet type of leader. He led by example on the ice with his crushing hits. You go back to the playoffs when, he made the big hit against Sedin there in front of the Vancouver bench. And, those are things that, that resonate. Those things that was a statement there. And Dustin Brown made a statement when he played for the Kings, and definitely have, his impression on Kings history forever.
Yeah, and when you talk about greatest Kings of all time, there's a guy still playing named Anze Kopitar who will have his name in that conversation as well when it's all said and done. Hey, Daryl Evans is in his 24th season as a Kings radio analyst, working alongside Hall of Famer Nick Nixon. You can hear every LA Kings game with Daryl and Nick on the LA Kings iHeart Audio Network. Daryl, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. Hopefully we can chat again when the Kings are making a playoff run.
I would look forward to it, Eddie. Keep up the great work. And I look forward to it once we get past the trade deadline and see how the push goes for the playoffs. But I think you're going to see this team playing a little bit deeper this year into the playoffs.
All right. I certainly hope so. And certainly looking forward to hearing you and Nick on the call on the iHeart Audio Network as well. Thank you, Daryl. And we'll talk to you down the line.
Take care, Eddie. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Hey, guys, don't forget, coming up on our Friday show, it is a Feedback Friday. We're going to talk about your questions and comments. There's still time to get some questions and comments in via email. The email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. You can also post comments on the YouTube episodes as well. Looking forward to hearing what's on your mind. Hopefully you enjoyed this conversation with Daryl Evans, and anything we talked about, you can certainly comment on that as well. Also, we're on Twitter at Locked On LA Kings, and also on Instagram at Locked On LA Kings. Thank you for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. Make your second listen Locked On NHL Prospects, your daily podcast covering the next generation of hockey superstars leading up to the NHL draft, plus NHL draft rankings and top prospect comparisons for every team. That is Locked On NHL Prospects, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you for listening and watching Locked On LA Kings. Have a great day, and as always, go Kings go.